Strength to strength, opining on everything from criminalising women who have abortions to a future US foreign policy which, shall we say, sounds somewhat robust. Why has he come so far, and could he end up in the White House? Why do you think he has come so far? There's all kinds of theories about what he tapped into.
I think for those of us, and I suppose I can probably speak for all of us at this table, who find him brute and rather frightening in his pronouncements during the election campaign, it's important to look beyond that to the constituencies to which he's appealing. And anybody who's travelled to America can understand why there are large sections of the what we would call their working class, and indeed their middle class, at least their lower middle class, who feel alienated and angry. I don't think they're numerous enough to put him in the White House. They're certainly numerous enough to sustain him through to the Republican nomination. But to me, the interesting question is, what would a Democratic president, Hillary Clinton in all likelihood, or any successor president do that will relieve that widespread sense of alienation and anger that you find in the United States, and you find it almost everywhere, but particularly in the increasingly impoverished working class and lower middle class, who's seen for 40 years or more almost no advance, in fact quite the opposite in their standard of living.
And there are some people who say, put it bluntly, the middle class, the American middle class, this great engine of growth from the 1950s onwards that built modern America, is finished. The idea of if you work hard, do the right thing, you can make it in America, it is the land of opportunity, that for tens of millions of people, that is over.
Yeah, and I think that the elites who have held the levers of power for the last 40 or 50 years have something to answer for in this respect. How much do they care or think about from their privileged eyries in the Upper East Side and West Side of Manhattan, or in Bel Air, or wherever they are, about what has happened in Gary, Indiana? You've been to Gary, Indiana, I'm sure, and we probably had another 40 or 50 cities.
Well, Detroit, or
where the degree of devastation, of deindustrialization, and of sheer poverty and despair is frightening when you consider that this is measured to be the richest country on earth.
This hollowing out of the middle class, in other words, the feeling that we're all in this together, is what we're sometimes told, but actually some people are more in it than others. That is something which is almost worldwide, at least in developed countries, isn't it?
The rage against the elites, which is a natural consequence of the decline in living standards and economic decline of the West, is a common problem in America, like in Italy, like in Europe. And I think that we have not really started to address what that means for our democracies, for our politics. Because what we're seeing now, and Italy has been unfortunately a pioneer in this, is the triumph of populism, the triumph of the man who is anti-establishment. We have had Berlusconi in Italy in the 90s, and he looks very much like Trump. He embodied this rage against the politicians, against the establishment, and this possibility of dreaming that you could become a billionaire, that something, if you were only honest and authentic and truthful, you will somehow change this trend of things that are making people increasingly angry and desperate.
Do you think it works when people think the system itself is corrupt? So if people think that the politics of Italy at the period were corrupt, look at all these dreadful parties, some of them are in cahoots with the mafia, what you need is a strong man who is, and it's always a man, above politics, above the political class, something different, and I can't be bought because I've got a lot of money. That's the theme.
Probably that was a reason why in Italy it happened before, because it was a completely disillusionment and mistrust of the political class. But the root causes are the decline of the standard of living, the decline of Western economies, which brings us back again at China. I mean, what is happening in the world is an entire change of paradigm, and we need to address what this creates in terms of politics and how it's changing our politics.
Rachel?
I mean, I have to say, what worries me about, can Trump become president is the idea that, it turns out that even though his chances of being nominated by the Republican Party have taken a dip in the last week because because of all the stuff he said in the last week that women,
some of which he's reversed.
Some of which
he's not
he's
quite
reversed
clear what he's saying about
because
abortion,
it seems even too outlandish even for him. But the stuff that what he said about women who have abortions needing to be punished, what he said about the relationship with NATO, the fact that he wants Japan and South Korea to develop their own nuclear capacity, the fact that he's prepared to nuke Europe and the Middle East has caused a dip in the likelihood of the man being nominated by his party. But what worries me is that we might be now in some kind of dystopian reality where the nightmare of Trump never ends, because he gave an interview to Fox News to be released tomorrow in which he said that even if they didn't nominate him, he might still stand. He'll stand as a third-party candidate, in which case he's not going away.
Well, as the editor of Private Eye once said, as a citizen I'm appalled, but as the editor of a satirical magazine I might be delighted. That is the way he's speaking about something else. That's the previous. But the phenomenon is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it does tap into something absolutely genuine, which leads to, you can rope in Golden Dawn in Greece and Syriza to a certain extent.
Yeah.
This anger about politics as usual because it's gone wrong for many of us.
Yeah, and people feel detached and disconnected and frightened. I think we've all underestimated the impact of that 2008 crash as well. I think that's part of the context. A lot of editors write leaders saying, that it was a sort of fleeting moment of no great significance. Well, look at what has happened politically since then. And we've experienced Trump here in the sense that, just remember, 2 years ago almost, UKIP won a national election here. They came top of the poll in the European elections, saying the same kind of thing. We can sort of protect our borders against immigrants in the same way that, almost the sort of same way as he's going to build a wall splitting Mexico. I mean, offering the same kind of theoretical security in this insecure world. The reason why I don't think he will become president, even if he stands as an independent or whatever, is in the end, the level of scrutiny you get in that situation makes it very difficult. The abortion thing this week was quite interesting. Changing his mind within 24 hours, panicking at the reaction.
Having changed his mind from being pro-choice in the past.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's 3 changes of mind. And when that happens, I think this apparently sort of personification of total security and authority starts to fall apart when you start kind of making these statements off the hoof and then changing your mind. The spell he casts over a frightened, insecure part of that American electorate starts to go as well.
I think we need to look beyond. We could all indulge ourselves with fury and dismay at the way Trump is behaving and speaking. But I think we need to look beyond Trump, because I think we will in November be looking beyond Trump. There'll be a new president. It's overwhelmingly likely to be Hillary Clinton.
Or Bernie Sanders.
But I think that we in the West, led by, as we have been for so long, by the United States, need to readdress.
I don't think it's fury and dismay at all.
Some of the basics of our economic and social policy, and that inevitably we're going to have to look to some of the old gods of community, tribe, nation, the discredited gods, because the gods of globalization and secularization seem to be failing. Whether we look at the debate over Europe in this country, or at the Trump phenomenon in the United States, people are looking for greater security, and they're looking towards the old certainties. And somehow or other we have to take care of that. And one of the aspects is going to be economic policies which are more protective of our communities, particularly in this country, the industrial community.
John, we've just got about a minute and a half left, but I just wondered whether you felt, because some of the columnists writing in your paper, the New York Times, have suggested that this is the Republican Party have brought this upon themselves. In other words, they have been very negative throughout the Obama presidency for, posing issues, that's fine. But because of the paralysis, the system doesn't seem to work. And that Trump is an extension of that kind of disgust? And
I
do you
think-
see anything in that?
I think it's there's a case to be made for that, but I think it's too narrow to blame the Republican Party, and you could equally make a case against the Democrats who've held power in the White House and in the Congress for long periods
So
of time
let's
since
call
the
it just
Second
the
World War.
elites then, because that's
Yes.
what they both represent.
Yes.
And that's what the anger is against. It's
Trump
against
is-
an
Which
elite.
is the Sanders phenomenon as well.
Which has gamed the system in their favour, caused more inequality in the world than there has ever been in the Western world, in these richest countries. So that's part of the anger, isn't it?
Are we not
It's-
ourselves
Trump
part of the
is
elite?
part of
Well,
the
I
Are
don't
we,
know about
it seems to me the media also have something
Yeah.
to answer
The
for in
media-
this.
Absolutely,
Part of
absolutely.
it.
The fact that you're not taking Bernie
Well,
Sanders seriously
on
is
that,
symptomatic.
One of the things about being the old-fashioned media is we have to end it there because that's it for Dateline London for this week. We're back next week at the same time. You can, of course, comment on the programme on Twitter @Gavin. Thanks for watching and goodbye.
We will make America great again.